So I will be recording. So good evening and welcome all. I see we have other guests and representatives from Senator Collette's office and Representative Stevens' office. This is, as Mark had mentioned, it's a very informal meeting. There are a couple key topics that Mark and I were kicking around just for discussion. But just before we get into that discussion, I just want to make sure that we get through the official business. So the August meetings had been amended. Has anyone had an opportunity to review the amended minutes? And if so, does anyone have changes, or do I have a motion to approve? Any motion to approve? Yep, let me unmute. I'm trying to unmute anyone.
Move to approve.
Okay, do I have a second motion?
Second.
Okay, great. And then regarding the September minutes that were recently submitted, has everyone had an opportunity to review the September minutes? And if so, do I have any revisions, or do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve as submitted.
As submitted? Okay, great. Do I have a second? Do I have a second motion? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. And I thought it might be helpful just to kind of let everyone know who is who the EAC members are. Oh, we're going to wait for, that's probably Representative Stevens.
Hey, Todd. How are you? Good, good. Yourself? No problem. What do you want me to do? No, we have a virtual thing going on.
Let's call to order the meeting started at 7:05, just so you have that official time.
Yeah, Francesca just sent it to me. I'll send it to you. Okay, bye.
So minutes approved without objection?
Yes, that is correct for both August and September.
Okay.
And Lisa, just for the minutes, the meeting officially started at 7:05. If you do not want to wait for Representative Stevens, I thought it would be helpful just to, with a show of hands, our names appear, just to identify who the EAC members are. My name is Ree Monahan. I'm the chair of the EAC. And if you just want to raise your hands, everybody else who's on the EAC. Great, great. Thank you. And Harry as well. Larry. Okay, good. We also have an attendance, of course, just for Larry and for Corinne, you know, Mark Gray, who's the Board of Supervisors chair, and also the EAC liaison. We also have Danielle Duckett, who is the Board of Supervisors vice chair, who is present tonight as well. Thank you for attending. And I guess, Larry, did Todd get back to you? Should we wait or should we move forward?
Probably move forward.
Okay.
Again, he's on a soccer field. I think I just sent him the link, so I think he's going to join by his phone. But
Okay.
I wouldn't wait for him. I can start and discuss whatever would
Okay,
like
great.
to.
Okay. What we're going to do is, if you want to provide an overview of the work that you're doing regarding PFAS, and then also Corinne, if you can discuss the work that Senator Collette has been conducting, and then we're going to open it up for EAC questions and then questions for the general public, if you have any. We were thinking about topics regarding funding. Will funding be available for townships and EACs? And if so, what our role would be. So Larry, if you want to provide an overview of the work regarding the Military Installation Remediation and Infrastructure Authority.
That'll be great. I think you referred to me at one point as a representative from Todd Stevens' office. I want to correct that.
Okay.
I'm a proud Horsham Township municipal employee. Been there about 5 years. I have a couple hats on. Number one, I'm Director of Community and Economic Development for Horsham Township. Number two, I'm Deputy Director of the Horsham Land Redevelopment Authority. That's the group that oversees the base redevelopment efforts. Number three, as of the first of this year, I found myself as the Treasurer and Deputy Director of the Military Installation, Remediation, and Infrastructure Authority. Back in November, Governor Wolf signed off on House Bill 1410, which afforded us a zone and a designated authority, much like, if you know, the Allentown NIS, the Lancaster CRIS, the Bethlehem CRIS, the Tamaqua CRIS. It's kind of the same concept, where there's a designated part zone, and we call it the MIRI zone. That's short for Military Installation, Remediation, and Infrastructure Authority. That zone is designated as the base property, and that's 862 acres, and nothing's really going on there, but someday it will. I think Todd is waiting to be let in, Ray. Do you have the ability to let him in?
Yeah, I just received a beep. Okay, he's joining. Hello, Representative Stevens. Let me see. Okay, great.
I think I'm in.
There
Yes,
you go,
you
Todd.
are. You're unmuted.
I introduced myself, and I also just started talking about how Governor Wolf signed House Bill 1410 in November. You can jump in from there, sir.
Got it. Well, I am sorry, actually. I should have looked more closely at my calendar. So I'm glad that Larry reached out to me, because this had slipped my mind here. So I just appreciate very much the opportunity to speak with you guys. And I don't know how many people are on the chat, but
17.
this is a 17. You said
17 people.
great. Okay, so this is it's a great opportunity, and we are really excited. We're in our inaugural year here with the Military Installation, Remediation, and Infrastructure Authority. And in a nutshell, I'll just roll through kind of in a nutshell what this is and what our mission is, and then we can kind of talk a little bit about the mechanics. But I had, over my years in the legislature, heard about some economic development programs around Pennsylvania, particularly up in Allentown. There's an entity called the NIS, the Neighborhood Improvement Zone. And then there are what I'll call sister initiatives in other communities around Pennsylvania, out in Lancaster, in Bethlehem, in Tamaqua, and they're called CRISs, City Revitalization Investment Zones. And in essence, they are tools for economic development. And in each of those zones, a local authority is permitted to retain state tax revenue that is generated within a geographic area, and the local authority is permitted to utilize those funds for economic development purposes. So what I did was adapted that, and instead of utilizing those funds for economic development, I had proposed that we use those funds for PFAS remediation, and stemming from former military installations. And so that's the core mission of our authority that has been established pursuant to the legislation that Larry laid out. And we are, we're just about 3/4 of the way through our inaugural year. So this year we have one round of applications that we did in May, and those applications need to be submitted by water providers. So this year we had applications from Horsham, Warminster, the North Wales Water Authority, and the Ambler Water Department, Ambler Borough, on behalf of the Water Department. And so those applications were received in May. We receive our funds from the state, and I can get into the mechanics of that in just a minute, but we receive our funds from the state in December. So we will be dispersing the state funding portion of our grants this December. And we won't, we'll have more information about the details on the total amount available and which grants we can fulfill once we hit December. But in the meantime, I can just kind of give you an overview of what some of the applications that we've received have been for. As you may know, the Willow Grove Naval Air Station and the activities there contaminated the drinking water in many of the surrounding communities, including Horsham and Warrington and Warminster. And so all of the ratepayers in those three municipalities have been paying extra fees in their water rates. And each municipality does it a little differently, but they all, in essence, in each place, customers have been paying extra to remove PFAS from the water. So in all three instances, the applications included a refund of those surcharges, but there's also remediation initiatives that we can fund. And so I know that Ambler was looking at connecting a PFAS filter, a carbon filter. I don't know if it's going to be carbon or resin, but it was going to be a filter to remove PFAS to address some issues outside the borough. They have since revisited that because they just have some challenges going on with their move to convert over to an authority. So that's preventing them from moving forward with their application at this point in time. But nonetheless, Ambler is certainly eligible to apply for funds, and we want to be a source of revenue for them to help address PFAS for all the customers that they serve. And so, that's kind of a high-level 30,000-foot overview. Larry's the executive director of the authority. I'm the current chairman of the authority. And, I just want to make sure that, the folks in Lower Gwinnett know we are ready, willing, and able to work with you between now and next May to try to do everything we can to eliminate any PFAS from any drinking water, that may be found in the area. So we're encouraged and looking forward to working with your group and the township, and probably based upon the way things are set up, the Ambler Borough and or the Water Department, since they are the water provider for I think the areas that we are most likely to be addressing here. So that's kind of a 30,000-foot view. Larry, do you have anything to add, just sort of in general, about the program, things that we are able to do, how we might be able to help?
Yeah, just from a little bit of background, the MIRIA zone, I was starting to talk about that. Again, it's the base property, which is actually 13 parcels, 862 acres of ground. It was also parcels around the base where development rights were restricted. And on top of that, MIRIA was able to select about 100 acres of other property. So at the end of the day, we ended up with about 1,800 acres, 58 parcels, and that it translated into 109 parties that we needed to file a report with the Department of Revenue from July 1st to September 1st. In our initial year, subject to COVID, we were very happy to get 102 parties, I think it was, or a participation rate of about 94%. So we designed and got approved by our board the municipal water provider grant program. So under that program, as Representative Stevens referred to, we have the ability to rebate surcharges that have been paid. We have the ability to pay for water remediation, which is already to reimburse for water remediation. And thirdly, which is important to a number of our folks, the ability to make connections between folks that were impacted with PFAS, have private wells, but have not been connected to the public water system. So that's kind of the first bucket, out of proceeds from revenue, which we will get in mid-December. First, the expenses of the MIRIA come out. Secondly, water remediation efforts are paid for. And then third, long-term, we do have the ability to do economic and infrastructure projects in and around Horsham Township related to the base redevelopment. So, this year we got grant requests of about $11.6 million. Anybody that puts up a grant request, however, has to have skin in the game. Todd loves to say that word because I know the governor's office was very specific that he didn't want to give away money and not have folks have skin in the game or a piece of the action, as it were. When grants are applied for, people have to put up 20% of the grant amount to be able to create a local effort amount. That local effort is really the determining factor of how much money may be in the pot. So right now we're waiting to hear from Revenue, and we'll get a letter from them on December 1st, which says the certified amount of either the lesser of about $15.6 million, which is 500% of the local effort that I just talked about, or the amount that was actually collected and folks filed reports on the Department of Revenue server. So again, of these 1,500 or 1,800 acres or so, and by the way, some of the other CRISs and NISs are much smaller. They're only about 300 acres. The Lancaster, for example, has about 500 businesses in that very dense location. So to get all 500 people or 500 businesses and parcel owners to file, it's quite an endeavor. In our case, it was a little bit easier. I don't want to, again, I take great pride that our consultant and our team really worked hard to get 102. I think it was out of 109 folks filed. You know, some of the parcels are the Toll Brothers building off of Gibraltar. So, you know, Toll Brothers employees, Toll Brothers corporate income tax, other forms of taxes that would go to the state will come to the area. Subject to the provisions that I talked about of 15.6 million or the lesser of. Chapman Auto Group is in the zone. Tenise and Olson are in the zone, and we have met with them and thanked them for their participation. So we still don't know the dollar, and we're still very, very anxious to figure out the math once December 1st comes. So I don't know if that was where you wanted me to go, but I think that was enough. And if you have any questions, Todd or I will be happy to talk about it, I'm sure.
I have a thought. The EAC, the Lower Gwinnett EAC has been interested in this issue ever since 1410 was enacted, and all the members have a copy of 1410. And I'm interested in what you and Representative Stevens think would be a useful role for an EAC to play in this context, given that we are not water suppliers. And I think the way the statute stands, unless it's been amended since I last looked at it, you have to be a water company. So,
Todd, is that you or me?
I can take that. I'm actually trying to get in from my home computer, so I don't know if you guys can let me in to the meeting. On Zoom.
Trying to share. Trying to share your screen.
I think it just says it's waiting to let me in. So, because I'm on.
Yep.
There we go, connecting.
There you go. Okay.
All right.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, your stock photo is better, by the way.
Yeah, well, like I said, I apologize. I was at the soccer field with my son, so I'm sorry for the casual dress here. So I think it's a great question. One of the challenges that we have is the administration, the governor's office, was insistent that there be, and Larry mentioned this, that there be quote skin in the game. Mm-hmm. And so anyone that wants to participate is going to have to make a contribution. You know, because Ambler is the water provider. Does Lower Gwinnett is Lower Gwinnett served by North Wales Water at any point as well, or just Ambler?
Yes, both. Mm-hmm.
Both. All right, but I don't think there's any PFAS in the North Wales water, is there?
No.
Not to my knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're really talking about Ambler.
Mm-hmm.
And so, look, I mean, they're going to need to be a partner in this process. Now, I've had you know, a lot, you know, it's interesting. I used to represent Ambler back, you know, 2010, 2011, 2012. So I have some relationships down there, and you know, that's how the initiative came about to help address the you know, the water issues that they were moving through the process with. They're just, you know, the timing is really challenging for them because, you know, they're trying to obviously apply. I know you guys are involved with that as well, trying to apply to become an authority. At the same time, they were trying to apply to us for funding and working with DEP to stand up a new filter to remove PFAS from the drinking water. So it was a lot for them to handle at one time. And, you know, it just, I know that the conversations about creating a new authority really started to take up, you know, really suck all the oxygen out of the room. So the short answer to your question is we're going to have to work with Ambler, you know, as the water provider. And, you know, there's a number, you know, we're a very flexible group. One of the things that is intentionally done within this legislation is it creates a symbiotic relationship where, as Larry explained, the authority, our authority, the MIRIA, doesn't receive any funding at all if nobody participates, if there's no local water providers that are participating and putting in 20%. Our funding is entirely dependent upon local contributions. So, you know, that forces us to be flexible and to work with the water providers and try to accommodate whatever issues they might have in their, you know, unique set of circumstances. As I mentioned earlier, you know, Warrington, Warminster, and Horsham all tackled the PFAS problem, but they all tackled it differently. And so, you know, we've had to be, you know, flexible in the way that we created our grants. And I can tell you, we sat with the water providers themselves in developing the grant guidelines that they were ultimately going to be applying for. So, you know, it was, you know, we all worked together, you know, hand in glove to try to address this issue because, you know, as I mentioned, it's a symbiotic relationship. Without them, we can't, you know, we don't get any funding from the state. And so we need buy-in from the local water providers. And so, you know, look, this is a conversation that, you know, probably the township board, you know, at some point can undertake about whether or not Lower Gwinnett wants to help with that 20%, you know, the local contribution. You know, that may be something that, you know, gets Ambler's interest. You know, I think it might be a matter of sitting down and having a conversation just informally. I've in my history, 10 years in the legislature, I've always tried to get everybody around the table. It's a little tougher with COVID, but try to get everybody around the table and, you know, let's try to see how we can all work together to solve a problem. And I think, you know, I certainly can do that with the folks in Ambler and the folks at Lower Gwinnett, and we can try to figure out, you know, what it's going to take in order to move something forward to address the issues that Lower Gwinnett's experiencing for sure. So I think the EAC can be a catalyst for those conversations. I think that you could help, you know, help spread the word, you know, about the fact that there is a program out there like ours that's available that we are going to need, you know, to partner with Ambler and all sit down and work together to try to solve the problem. And I'm happy to have that meeting. I'll be honest, I pulled the meeting together with some folks from Upper Dublin. You know, they were very interested in, you know, trying to address the PFAS issues that, you know, are existing in Upper Dublin through the Ambler Water Department water service. And so that was the catalyst for the initial application from Ambler, you know, for that project down there. Now, again, that seems to have gone sideways here, but, you know, I'm happy to pull a similar meeting together with the folks at Lower Gwinnett and the folks at Ambler to begin a discussion about whether there's a way that we can work together to solve the problem.
Well, Todd, this is a much bigger problem than might be realized, right? So when I asked our township manager to give me the numbers of who's getting what water from where, there were between 500 and 600 accounts in the eastern part of Lower Gwinnett Township that get their water from from the Ambler Water Company, and the other 2,000 or so, between 2 and 3, I think, get their water from North Wales Water Authority. So we've been kind of left out of it because we're a small number, but the number, the accounts are hiding the numbers. Now, in those account totals is the Lower Gwinnett Wissahickon High School, Wissahickon Middle School, and Wissahickon Elementary School. So that's about 3,000 people. And plus we have some apartment buildings. So when you add all of those up, that's getting their water from Ambler, it's a substantial number. And of course, the people in the high school, we have that new pool complex. They're swimming in it, they're drinking it, and they're bathing in it. So it's a much bigger issue than people might think.
Mark, could I jump in and raise a suggestion there on something that Lower Gwinnett and Ambler can do to help with 1410?
Sure.
Right now, you guys don't have a representative on the Myria board. It was specifically written without allowing Senator Collette to be on it because she lives in Lower Gwinnett, which is not directly adjacent to the Warminster or the Willow Grove Air Station. Representative Stevens and our team spoke before the bill was passed that we wouldn't oppose it now, so it would get passed, but that we would discuss amending the language afterwards so that she could be on that board and represent all the people who don't live in those three towns. We're talking about Upper Moreland, we're talking about Ambler, we're talking about Lower Gwinnett, anywhere that's going to be covered by this plume that is still moving because that dirt is all still sitting there. So
Right.
I think getting her on the board would be a really good step to making sure Lower Gwinnett and Ambler have a voice there.
Yeah, well, we certainly need to do that. I don't know what the mechanism is to do that, but we are greatly affected. And just so everybody understands too, the Wissahickon School District covers Whippane, Ambler, and Lower Gwinnett. So all of those students that populate that high school populate the whole campus come from those three municipalities. So it's a much bigger problem. And Todd, when I read your, I think it was one of your newsletters, you talked about the filters you got for Upper Dublin. And I was thinking, well, those people in Upper Dublin must thank you because they've got some filters. Well, we need those too, right? So,
Sure. And we'd love to do the same thing. I mean, that's, I think that's why I had reached out and, we're having this conversation. So there's no question. I think the next step, Mark, probably is to get a meeting together with, someone at the township. You would be best to determine, who that is. Senator Collette should absolutely be a part of the conversation. She represents Ambler and Lower Gwinnett. And so there's no question. And so we can get, Ambler and Lower Gwinnett and myself and Senator Collette together and begin a dialogue. And Larry should be a part of that too, as the executive director, so that, we can, and having that dialogue now is important because, I know, it's October and these applications aren't going to be due until May, but, things move pretty quickly. And if we're going to have to make tweaks to our guidelines, if we're going to have to make changes so that we can make sure that we're addressing these issues in Lower Gwinnett, we need, we're going to need to be able to have the time to do that. So I think that's the next step, is really to have a meeting with Ambler and Lower Gwinnett, Senator Collette and myself and Larry.
all right, I can have somebody from our staff put that together because we definitely want to do this, right? So, in the Ambler, and I don't know how much of either you or the senator's office is aware, the Ambler Water Authority is in infrastructure issues. They have, I'm looking for the right word here. A lot of their infrastructure is 100 years old.
And I just want to point out also that separate from Myria, we have been able to get them a $1 million grant, which will allow for PFAS filtration of one well. I know that doesn't solve all the issues, but that is already in the works from something we put in motion last year around this time. So they're still working on that. I think it has been slowed down, the implementation of it, because of this authority issue. But that money has been pinpointed for that already.
Has there been any distribution of that or no?
Well, I know that the contract has been submitted. I know that last I checked, it was executed. I don't know that the money is in hand yet, because right around, like within 3 weeks after I talked to them about the contract, I was hearing this news about the authority and that challenge that they were making. So I am not sure how those two things play together, and I'd have to find out.
My impression is that there are about 8 wells that they draw water from.
I think they're 10.
Oh, they're 10. Okay. What I don't know is to what extent are the wells commingled? My sense is that they don't mingle.
I can't say for sure, but that was definitely the impression I took from my conversations.
Which would mean if you have 10 wells, you need 10 filters.
Right. We told them at the time we were only able, we asked how many, like, could you identify the worst such that it would be valuable if we could only get you money for one? Would you be able to pick the worst one? And they said yes.
Whoops.
So that made me think like they know which ones have the biggest problems.
Absolutely.
Well, I would hope they would. They're supposed to test all those wells, I think, daily to make sure that we don't have any, we have a known level of contamination, right? And we've had a conversation, Danielle and I had a conversation with the borough over their management processes of the water company, and there's substantial gaps from where it is they are and where they need to be. So the eastern part of the township has had 9 failures of the water system infrastructure since the beginning of the year. So they've got serious infrastructure problems, and they've got water quality problems over and above strictly the PFAS. So it's a complex problem, is what they've got on their hands. So it's it's a delicate situation. So, and I know they've gone to the PUC and requested that it be made a municipal authority, and the rest of the township municipalities have gone to the PUC to file some objections. And right now, the PUC has put everybody in a cooling off period, so we can try to work out our differences over what a municipal authority should look like if there's going to be one. So there's a substantial differences of opinion right now as well. So there's a lot going on. And I don't know if the senator's office, I think Todd knows, the EPA and DEP has issued a TMDL for the Wissahickon, and it is going to be expensive. So we've intervened and asked that an alternate be available, because there's an alternate code in the federal code that allows alternate approaches, and there's 13 townships and 4 wastewater treatment plants in it. So the wastewater treatments, the stormwater, the sanitary sewer, and the drinking water, it's all connected. And about 300,000 residents of Philadelphia get their drinking water out of the Wissahickon. So it's a compound problem. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. So we're just trying to tackle them one at a time. And Todd, I'm going to talk to our township manager about setting a meeting up and see how we have to proceed here, because I don't believe it's going to get better if we do nothing. I understand Horsham has stopped pumping their wells, and they're getting their water primarily now through North Wales Water Authority. Is that correct, Larry?
We do get water from North Wales, but I believe that we do have a number of GAC units that have come online. I don't know the number. I'm not part of the water authority, but I know we've made some significant investment in GAC units, and I know what we produce versus what we produced 2 years ago is markedly different. Todd, do you have any point on that? I know you talk to Tina more regularly than I do.
Yeah, we have 10 GAC units in Horsham. So 10 of our wells have GAC is granulated activated carbon. And actually, we've moved over to resin in I think all of them, but certainly some of them. Once we had some kinks with DEP, but yeah. So we aren't we haven't had to. We don't rely on North Wales water as much as we used to. We are more and more self-sufficient here because of those GAC units and able to have PFAS free water.
Well, so is that what we have to do for Ambler? Is put those resin filters in?
I mean, that's been the solution. An engineer would be better equipped to answer that question, but that was the solution everywhere that I've worked with so far.
Right now, though, the resin filters actually are still not I forget the terminology, but basically they're still in like the experimental designation. So I'm not sure. Horsham had to jump through a whole lot of hoops, and I think they are still in some sort of phase where they have to do more frequent monitoring of those because they can't be cleared as an approved device until they are shown to be able to deal with shown to be able to filter hazardous substances. And they can't do that until PFAS are declared a hazardous substance. That is what one of Senator Collette's 2 bills is meant to address. So either that rule that prevents the resin filters from being able to do this needs to be changed, or Senator Collette's rule needs to be passed, because there are a lot of things that we can't do simply because PFAS are not classified as hazardous substances, and the resin filter thing is one of them. Horsham's gone through a lot of hoops to get these filters. I have had some conversations with Mary about the carbon versus resin. I don't think Ambler's financially in a position to get to the resin filters yet. There's a much higher upfront cost, even though they're cheaper in the long term. I don't think Ambler's in a position to outlay those upfront costs yet.
Just so you guys understand, the filter can be the same filter. So Horsham started with carbon filters, and then they moved over to the resin because the resin was going to be more cost effective over the long term. Corinne is exactly right. It's a higher upfront cost, but it lasts a lot longer. You don't have to change it out nearly as often as you do the carbon. And what's fascinating about it, there's a lot that's fascinating about it, but anyway, so yeah, I mean, look, to answer, I think the short answer to your question is yes, somewhere in some way, shape or form, we're going to need to have to, figure out a way for Ambler to have the resources to go ahead and stand up these filters for these wells in all likelihood. Now, the good news is their engineer is the same engineer that Horsham uses. And so, Gilmore is very familiar with, the technology and what's needed in order to remediate PFAS. So they're able to, pretty quickly assess what's necessary. And I know for that well down in Upper Dublin, they were able to make that assessment. Okay, what's going to be needed in order to address the issues there, and they were able to give us, a cost estimate, and that helped get the ball rolling. So, I think it's probably a similar process that we'd undertake here. Is we would ask Ambler if they'd be willing to ask Gilmore to, take a look at, what the cost would be to go ahead and remediate the wells that contain PFAS. And, that would be the kind of the first step, because then we'll at least have a sense on what we're looking at. I mean, they'd be able to tell us how many wells need remediation, what those costs would be to remediate the wells that need remediation. And then, we can begin to assemble the financial package necessary to accomplish it.
Sounds good. It sounds from what Corinne is saying that Representative Stevens, that the issue is partly a matter of what cartridge you put in, and that the enclosure for the cartridge, together with its valves and so forth, it's the same size. In other words, if you started out with a cheaper, straight older carbon filter, you could just swap it out once money becomes available for a upgraded filter. Do I understand that right?
I think if you actually start with resin, you can make it much smaller.
You can.
But I think if you have a carbon one already,
Mhm.
you don't have to replace the carbon one. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Corinne. So it can be, you know, if you're starting with resin out of the gate, it's a smaller unit. But you know, as has been the experience in Horsham and Warminster, they started with carbon and then just moved over to you know, to the resin from there. So, but this is, you know, it's a question that honestly the engineers can sort through as to what's most effective and also, you know, what's most cost effective to address the issues specific to Lower Gwinnett.
Well, Todd, Gilmore is also our engineer.
Perfect.
Oh yeah, they're a big engineering firm. So, and they're doing a lot of work for us, the township, for our MS4 and for our TMDL. So, so they're very familiar with the water issues. So, but do you know what the number was to remediate one of the wells? Was it 10 million, a million, 500,000?
In Horsham, the cost was $1 million per well. And that seems to be consistent with what Corinne was
That's
describing.
what Ambler quoted us at, was 1 million for one well.
Yeah.
And
Right.
what kind of filter was that?
That was for granulated carbon. That was what they had already calculated based on before we had found money for them. And then also, again, given that we had already been in some meetings with Horsham about the complications with the resin filters, we all came to the conclusion that with their financial situation at the time and with the uncertainty about their ability to get resin filters approved, that they wanted to go forward with the granulated at that time.
What's wrong with the carbon filters? They're good. They're long term.
I get the sense that they're not bad, just that the resin are, I don't know if they're more effective, they're as effective and they last a lot longer and ultimately cost less.
I see. So there's no failures of the carbon filters to do the job. It's just a matter of long-term economics.
And I think because of the chemistry, resin can be recycled in some sense, recharged and reused. Whereas
Exactly.
one-time thing. Once the carbon adsorbs the PFAS, it's dumpster material.
Exactly. Exactly.
And the resins can all be regenerated.
Right. It's like a water softener in your basement.
Yeah,
You like resins, pick it up.
I toured the resin manufacturing facility. It's in Philadelphia. And I'm not a chemist, I'm not a scientist, but it was fascinating to me. Just
Protec?
no, oh no, of course I don't remember the name. No, Calgon's the carbon.
Got it.
I forget the name of the place now, but I could pull it up in my contacts.
My PFAS binders are in the other room, but
All right. So Todd, in order for Lower Gwinnett to participate, right, in some way, since Ambler is already participating, are you saying, or maybe Karina, you can give us the answer to this. I don't know who, but we would have to put 20% of what? So if we have one well and it's $1 million, we'd have to come up with 200,000, and then what? So then that pool of money would be available, and then that one well could be. I'm assuming it's one well. I have no idea. We could be served by all of them. As far
defer
as I
to
know.
Scott, to Representative Stevens, but
Yeah.
I think that you would actually have to like funnel that money through Ambler or through.
Okay, right. That makes sense.
Is that right?
Yeah, so Ambler has to be the applicant, you know, where, I mean, so somebody has to put up $200,000, whether it's Ambler, whether it's Lower Gwinnett, whether it's a combination, or whether it falls from the sky. Somebody locally, you know, and again, that goes back to that skin in the game that, that was required when we were drafting the legislation. So somebody's going to have to put up the 20%. And that's, you know, part of the conversation that I think, you know, ultimately needs to occur between Lower Gwinnett and Ambler in that regard. And so, and it may actually be, so we are capped at, the amount of revenue we get from the state is 500% of whatever that local contribution is. So we'll use your example. If if Ambler or Lower Gwinnett or somebody put in $200,000, then that means come December, our authority would have $1 million from the state to spend. Out of that needs to come the administrative costs for our authority, our staff, our legal fees and everything else like that. And so it's not a straight 5-to-1 ratio. We'll know better exactly what that ratio is after the disbursements this December, because it's our first time through. I just want to put that out there to make sure that you're aware. It wouldn't be a straight 5-to-1. It's probably, going to be closer in the neighborhood of 3 or 4-to-1, as opposed to 5-to-1. But that's how the math works.
Well, the reason I asked that, there's a little bit of urgency here. So we're starting our budget cycle. So if that 200, just picking a number here, if that $200,000 is not in the budget, and we wanted to do something next year in some way, it makes this whole process harder. Now every township has got that, every municipality has got that planning cycle issue. And Abington, for example, they've had to redo their budgets, I'm told, a couple of times because COVID has impacted them financially so much. Lower Gwinnett has not been impacted by COVID from a municipal revenue point of view. A lot of other townships have. So we've been very fortunate, but it's got to be in the budget. So if we don't put that in, so this meeting tonight's very important. So we're having our budget workshop. It'll be this month, shortly, I think. So we have to pick a number, right? So 200,000. So if we want to do something next year, and to get one of these wells working, it's 200,000 in round numbers, right? It's 200,000. And right now, if we weren't having this conversation right this minute, it would be zero in the budget, right? So I think Danielle and I can work the budget in a way that we can allocate some resources to it. But then Ambler's got to play in this game too, because they got to take the lead. We can't really do anything. It's what I'm hearing. We have no standing. Only Ambler has standing, but we're the ones paying a huge bill, and we have thousands of people consuming the water. I mean, we have it's taxation without representation, right? We're paying the bill, but we have no voice.
I think your only agency outside of working with Ambler would be to do something similar to what Warrington did recently, which is where I live, is they completely sold their water authority or their water department to North Wales. So now we just completely changed our water provider to North Wales Water in our town. I don't know if I don't know anything about the financials or mechanics of that, but I think that would be the only other option to investigate would be just.
Well, we have. We've walked down that road, right? I haven't. I don't know. I don't know if I've told anybody on this call. I'll tell you now. We've asked in the past, and again, Danielle and I had a conversation recently, said, look, the infrastructure in the water system in Ambler is so bad. It is so old that personally, I don't think there's enough money for them to do anything. They've already reached the tipping point and they've gone over. So the new pipes appear to be asbestos from 100 years ago. The old pipes, terracotta. And they're still in the ground and they're still providing water. And those pipes are demineralizing. So when their well water has a lot of minerals in it, but by the time it gets to the end consumer, it's much, much worse. So even if we clean up the wellhead and put new filters on them, it won't matter in the sense that we still have these other contaminants, but the filters will stop PFAS. So we've asked them why won't they sell themselves to North Wales? And there's basically been no response. And we've asked North Wales, have you approached them? And they said several times, and the response from Ambler has been crickets, right? So nothing comes back. So so Ambler doesn't have the resources to rebuild their infrastructure. And if we're going to put money into this for the wells, I mean, again, our hands are tied because the water system, even though the pipes are in the ground in Lower Gwinnett Township in the roads, it doesn't matter. We don't own the pipes. So the delivery system is owned by Ambler Water. And Ambler Water doesn't have the resources to upgrade them. Hence, we've had 9 water breaks since the beginning of the year in the eastern part of the township. And I see no end to that. And so we buy filters and we put the filters on, and then what? Well, hopefully they sell their infrastructure, and North Wales Water Company shuts it down and puts new pipes and so forth. So we don't have an easy answer, but the problem today is we're drinking this water, right? So we have to do something. Even if we throw $1 million at it between now and whenever we get infrastructure replaced, whoever owns it, it's probably money well spent. But again, we have no, even though we have the resources, or, in theory, we have the resources to do something, our hands are tied. We can't do a darn thing.
I think this meeting will be very instrumental in moving forward.
Yes,
Sorry,
Dave.
I just wanted to, hi, I'm Danielle. I just wanted to briefly share some thoughts, or just recap in my mind and then ask a question. So we don't have agency because we don't own the water authority and we're utilizing Ambler's water. So we, in and of ourselves, cannot apply for this money. We could theoretically assist Ambler if we worked in conjunction and assist them with, after we identify the number of wells, see if there's a way that we can assist them financially with meeting the match. Or even if that's reasonable, if they're interested in it, that's an option. The other option is to try and compel them to transfer their water authority to North Wales, which they have not been receptive to. So being a policy director for a state rep, my third option is, what's our legislative fix? How can you both, through the legislature, either the General Assembly or the Senate, you can kind of see how our hands are tied, and me and Mark are speaking. Yeah. We spoke to Ambler Borough, but we're also speaking as recipients of the water. And I'm a recipient of the 9 times of the break. So I know that my pipe is asbestos, and I know that it has broken 9 times since January, which is a tremendous amount, and not just for me, but for the residents that live around me. And we as a township have monies that we've spent trying to repair roads and keep up with the milling and all, in some ways has thought to exacerbate the issue. So now it's affecting our ability to maintain our infrastructure. So how can we compel, or is there a legislative fix to compel the other municipality to either take some sort of action or to join forces with us and address the issue immediately? And I don't think the filter is the final. I mean, no. Given the fact that PFAS hasn't been identified as a hazard, or the reason why.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that the one legislative fix would be to set a lower MCL, a maximum contaminant level, lower, such that Ambler's water is in violation of it. That wouldn't erase the fact that they don't necessarily have the money to fix it, but they would then be in violation and would be compelled to fix it. And they would also, if we had that, and we were able to trace the pollution to the military, if we could do both things, say that it was violative and say that it was caused as a direct result of the military, the likelihood would be that Ambler would be able to bring a lawsuit and recoup the money eventually from the military. That is the ultimate kind of game plan of why we want to set a lower MCL and why we want to make these hazardous substances, is to open the door for lawsuits, so that, you know, Representative Stevens and Senator Collette aren't having to dig up these grants from, you know, dark corners of a budget that we know this year is going to be like slim pickings. But even as the most optimistic version of myself, I can't say I think that that will be quick. You know, depending on the outcome of the election, the EPA is theoretically working on its own MCL. That's been a little slow going recently. DEP is also working on its own MCL, which Governor Wolf promised us would happen before the EPA's, but we'll see. So our legislation would ideally put in an interim MCL until one of those things happened. And, you know, we'll revisit, we're going to reintroduce it as soon as the next session comes into play. And, you know, we'll see how, we'll see what, maybe it gets different energy then, but I think other than what we've been doing, which is just kind of looking for grant money, I made a couple notes to myself of like other places we can try, maybe because it's a school, maybe, you know, looking at, you know,
That's what I was gonna say.
diverse
It is-
populations that we could dig
Yeah.
up a little bit more money. But it's a hard time to be digging up money.
I have a hypothesis about the different options we were talking about with respect to Ambler. And I'm an outsider. I don't have a lot of background with Ambler politics. But I do notice that Ambler is a fairly small town. It's got about 5,000 population. I don't have a sense that it has a huge tax base. Maybe it does, and that I don't know about. But if I were a township that had I don't know, an oil well on my land, I'd never want to get rid of the oil well. And water may be the new oil in some ways. And my guess would be, again, it's just a hypothesis, my guess would be that they would never want to disown their own water company and have it go over to someone else. Just a guess.
Yeah, Larry, I think that's probably right.
Mhm.
Because they would have done it already if that was in fact the case. And they've had substantial rate increases over the years. I mean, substantial. And I think it's just trying to maintain what they've got. They can't get ahead of it. And I do not see that situation improving at all. And the result of it is what we have now, and I don't see it getting better unless we get, the only way I can see that the PFAS, the forever chemicals, getting better is if we do something with the filters.
Yeah.
But that's for Ambler, that's only actually a small part of the problem.
Right.
But it is a substantial part in the sense that we're drinking this stuff. But let me switch this around a little bit. I put a couple of filters into my house.
Mhm.
They're not whole house filters yet, but I'm looking at systems, and they're really expensive to put a whole house system in. But I guess my question to you, or maybe it's the wrong audience here, should our constituents start to think about protecting their drinking water in that respect? I mean, everybody's got Flint in the back of their mind, and I think we're not Flint. This is not that, does not rise to that level of urgency. On the other hand, we don't really know what the safe level of PFAS is in drinking water, right? So how long do you not do something, right? That's really the problem. So, and that's a lot of people are getting impacted in all, 5,000 people in Ambler. Now, Larry, I think that number is a round number, and I think that's probably right. But, and all of that, I'm sure, is served by the water company.
Mhm.
But we have 3,000 just in the school district property alone. So, we're almost the size of Ambler. Right, so it's a big problem, and I also know in the Lower Gwinnett area, and I would say in general in Ambler as well, this is not a known problem. There's hardly anything on it, social media on this issue.
Mhm.
There was a lot on Upper Dublin for a while, and there was a lot of traction on that. I know Paul Leonard, he's co-chair with myself on the TMDL effort, and Paul and I have had some conversations about this, and that's when he told me, Todd, that he was getting a filter, and I said, well, how come you guys are getting one and we're not, right? So, all right, so now he's got a filter, and his constituents are happy, but my constituents don't even know they need a filter.
Well, no, he's not getting a filter now because of this whole thing with what's going on with the authority. I mean, that's the whole, you know, we were going to be funding the connections from I forget if it was between two filters or between the filter and the residents, but that whole issue is now kind of up in the air. So they don't have a filter yet. And, you know, we're prepared, you know, we were fully planning on moving forward with their grant applications in December, but, you know, that's been, you know, Ambler has you know, backed off of that at this point because the uncertainty concerning the new authority. So everything's kind of up in the air as to how that's going to be resolved at this point.
I'm sorry, my dog's barking. A truck went by. With respect to amplifying the message in Ambler and in places outside of Horsham, Warrington, and Warminster, one thing that's going on outside of the financial issues, which is really what we're focusing on tonight, is the health study, the multi-state health study. And there is a community action panel that has formed with the State Department of Health. It's going to have its first public meeting in November, I believe. The Senator and Representative Stevens and about 10 or 12 other stakeholders from the community are members. And one of the things that we are being tasked to do over the next year is to work on building the community knowledge, because they're going to have people volunteering and signing up to give blood to be studied. Now, most of these people, they're still working on the exact boundaries of where the volunteers can be from. It will likely only be from those 3 townships again. But hopefully it will, you know, spread the message and maybe even encourage. I know there's already discussion of people wanting a secondary study that goes beyond those 3 towns, because obviously until we stop this spread from keeping going, people beyond these, you know, water doesn't obey township lines. So, but I'm hopeful that as we go forward with this health study, that, you know, more people will take an interest.
I think you're right. When I read executive summary on the study, it's going to be a long, I'm talking like a decade.
We're a year away from, they're hopeful that by the end of next year, they'll be done collecting samples.
That would be.
But even if they know how much PFAS is in your blood, I don't think that there's a direct correlation between that and a specific health response.
There are, and I could talk about this for hours. I'm super nerdy on it. If you want to email me, I can send you all sorts of things about that. They are going to be looking for correlations with various things. They did a pilot study on people in Warrington, and it showed a correlation, not necessarily correlation, not causation, I think is what they're saying.
Yeah.
But anyway, a lot of things, several kinds of cancers, immunological issues, prenatal issues,
Low weight, and
irritable Crohn's disease. And if you're really interested, there's a documentary on Netflix called The Devil We Know that is scary as hell, but is really informative on this topic.
All right. So
there's also, I think, on the Horsham site, there's an extensive health study. I can email it to, you know, make sure that you have that. But it is extremely extensive, you know, dealing with a whole bunch of different health issues.
Well, all right. So our next step here is to get a meeting together between the senator's office and Todd's office, and Larry. If you could attend, that would be good. And I'll talk to our Danielle and I will talk to our township manager, make sure we put something in the budget. I don't know. I haven't seen the first pass of the budget and the revenue numbers that are going to be allocated to it, so that we can do something, or at least tag some resources to do something and proceed that way, because we can't sit in our hands knowing what we know, right?
I agree.
So, and Todd, I just want to go back to one thing you said a minute ago. I thought the well that was serving Upper Dublin had the filter on it. Plus, Upper Dublin has the dam. So, not all of Ambler's water is wells. There is one dam over there where they get water from as well. And that's either in Upper Dublin or it might be right at the border. And I'm making a wild assumption that the water they're getting is the water that's closest to them. And that may be an incorrect assumption. I don't really know, because I don't have a map of the infrastructure of the Ambler, the Ambler supply. I have no idea what it looks like, how big it is, how old it is, that type of thing. And I don't know if they have a GIS system where all of this data has been entered into it or not. I know they have a resource constraint and have for a long time. So I don't know where to get the data actually, other than ask them. And I don't know if they could even provide it.
Upper Dublin is in largely the same situation Lower Gwinnett is, except they have an additional water provider. They don't have any of their own water providers. They rely on Aqua, North Wales Water Authority, and then the Ambler Water Department. And so, they've had the exact same frustration because, it's taxation without representation. Their residents are paying, whether it's Aqua or North Wales or Ambler, they're paying somebody else. They don't have any voice on that board. And, they're really stuck at, to the whims of that entity, whether, again, and it's every possible, it's Ambler Borough, so it's a municipality. It's the North Wales Water Authority, so it's a municipal authority, or it's Aqua, which is, a publicly traded company. So it's really almost every type of water provider you can have. And it's, the same all the way around. They've been frustrated, they have the same frustrations you have. And I can, it's been, they have the same frustrations you have. So I think, we just have to all work together because we're all in this together. I mean, Corinne hit it right on I think it was Corinne that said it, but somebody said, water doesn't respect municipal boundaries. And so we're all in this together. It's our region. We've got to work together, arm in arm, and try to help each other out as best we can. So we're in, Larry and I are happy to participate and happy to do everything we can to get the help, the financial help to Lower Gwinnett that you need. We just have to, get the other partners on board and work together to accomplish it.
How long did it take for Horsham to get their filters in place from the time they knew they needed to do something until the time the first one came online?
I don't know that answer. We were buying North Wales Water at the time during the construction of all those wells and everything else like that. So I know it was in 2016 when we got the $10 million through Penvest. And so, I think it was a little bit of time, obviously, to get 10 filters on the move. I don't know that answer, but we could get that answer. That's easy enough to find out.
I know we talk up that we went non-detect in April 2018. And again, that was through a combination of our own wells with GAC units and North Wales Water. And again, that's a message I try to get out every day, because if you Google Horsham, water comes up and people still talk about a problem that has been solved. But the actual construction, and somebody like Terry Funk at Gilmore will know that off the top of her head. I mean, because she lived it with us. She worked it with us.
Exactly right.
Okay. Well, we've got a lot of work to do in this area, a lot of work, and we're going to need help from our legislative folks here. And, it's the senator is just over the line. She's getting North Wales water. She's not getting Ambler water.
She is. And just speaking of her, I just got a text update that her dad just got out of surgery. So
Oh,
had
good.
surgery on his hand and his leg today and seems to be doing well right now.
Oh, that's
Good,
great.
Good, very good.
That's great. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And Corinne, you did leave your, include your email address. And what I can do is I can send that out to the group as well. And I can copy Todd and Larry. And if there's any updated information that you want to share with the group, that would be great. And does anybody else have any additional questions or thoughts?
I'm just delighted that you guys joined us here and are taking such an.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much. This
I
was
just
very
wanted
informative.
to mention that we are trying to start it, just the basic educational type communications. I think I have a goal for the PFAS committee in order to have something on the website by the end of the year. So if you could provide me with any information and guidance, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, just Maureen hasn't said anything, but she's actually a water quality scientist. And she happens to be in our EAC. So I can fact check everything with Maureen and no in a hurry what the real deal is. So
Email me whenever. I've got like a whole email I send to people who say they want to learn about PFAS, and it's got like 1 million links. So
Maybe that would be great. I'll send you an email and then I can share it with the group and copy you. That would be great.
but it doesn't have a whole lot on the financial side of things. So Senator
Okay.
Representative Stevens, if you have more of a compendium on that, I don't have a good breakdown on that.
Yeah, we actually are developing, because it's so complicated, we're developing a flow chart on that, and Larry might better know when we'll have that flow chart done. But when we have that done, we can get that over to help, really make it simple for people to understand, what we can
I'll
do.
throw the
and-
Myria website on my list of links.
Yeah, themyria.org. I'll tell you, this year has been a really interesting year. We knew that House Bill 1410 was in play for some time. Then all of a sudden we got the call after November that it was done, and we had to backfill very quickly. We had to form the authority. We had to write procedures. We had to write grant policy. We did a lot of work and a lot of hours getting it to where it is. And we still have things to do. I mean, we look at what we did well this year. We look at what we perhaps missed or some acreage that didn't get designated as part of the zone for a ridiculous reason that PA revenue stands behind. So again, it was a learning experience for us, and we're going to do it better next year and hopefully every year for the next 29.
Great. Great.
well, hopefully it won't take us that long to solve this
I know.
problem.
I
Larry.
hope we fix something by then.
Hopefully it'll be quicker.
By then.
All right.
Well,
Well, look,
thank you very much, everyone, for participating, for taking time out of your busy schedules. We really appreciate it. And again, Karina, I'll connect with you, and then Mark will work on the meeting. And if no one has anything further, we can conclude tonight's meeting.
yes, just thank you everybody for attending. We really appreciate it.
Okay,
Sorry,
great.
sorry for my tardiness. I apologize.
Well,
Thank
did you win the game? Did your son win the game or not?
No, it was practice actually. Oh, they had a scrimmage and they did win, but yeah, so I apologize, but I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, good to talk with you folks. Glad we could be here.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank
Everybody
you
have
all.
a good
Thank you.
night.
So the meeting is officially, if there's nothing further, the meeting is officially ended at 8:20 p.m. So thank you so much.
Right, bye.
I'm taking notes. I'm just trying to get contact information for the visitors. Okay. Good night.